Ignore the CRA installment reminder sitting in your mailbox and you can quietly hand the government over $10,000 in extra interest and penalties across 20 years. That is because CRA charges the prescribed rate plus 4% compounded daily on the payments you skip. I read the fine print so you don't have to. Most people treat this letter as a polite suggestion. By the end, you'll see exactly why that assumption is so expensive. The simple version is this. An installment reminder tells you to prepay your income tax in 4 quarterly chunks instead of one big check in April. On the surface, it reads like an optional nudge. But if you actually meet CRA's requirement and you skip those payments, CRA starts charging interest on every dollar you were late with. Think of it like a gym that lets you skip a month, then bills you interest on each skipped payment the moment you try to leave. Part 1 is the trigger. According to CRA, you generally must pay by installments if your net tax owing, that's your tax minus amounts already withheld at source, tops $3,000 in the current year and in either of the 2 prior years. In Quebec, the threshold drops to $1,800 each for federal and provincial tax, calculated separately. Think of the $3,000 as a tripwire. Cross it 2 years running and CRA flags you as someone who owes too much at filing to just leave it all to April. Part 2 is the twist most people miss. CRA says you only have to make installment payments if it actually sends you a reminder. No reminder, no obligation, even if you can already see you'll owe well over $3,000. Think of it like a toll road that only charges you if the camera catches your plate. The letter is the camera, which is exactly why ignoring it once it arrives is so costly. Part 3 explains why the numbers on the letter can feel off. CRA builds those reminders from your past returns, not your current situation. It typically uses your second preceding year's tax for the March and June payments, and last year's tax for September and December. Think of it like a weather forecast built entirely from last year's data. It can be completely wrong for the season you're actually living through, which matters a lot if your income swings. Part 4 is the engine that does the damage. CRA says if you're required to pay and you skip, delay, or underpay, installment interest kicks in at the prescribed rate plus 4% compounded daily. That prescribed overdue rate was 9% in the second quarter of 2023 and 7% in the fourth quarter of 2025. So your effective installment rate lands somewhere around 11% to 13%. Think of it like a government-set credit card that ticks up interest every single day you don't pay. Part 5 is the good news. CRA confirms that if you just pay the amounts printed on the reminder by the 4 due dates, you won't be charged installment interest at all even if your actual tax for the year comes in higher than those installments. If you overpay, CRA even pays you credit interest at the lower overpayment rate. Think of it like following a recipe exactly. Hit the amounts and the dates on the card and CRA simply cannot charge you. Part 6 covers the escape hatch that can backfire. CRA lets you use a current year option, estimate your own tax and base installments on that, which is great in a genuinely low-income year. But if you guess too low and end up paying less than the prior year method demanded, CRA charges interest on the shortfall, calculated quarter by quarter as rates change. Think of it like calling your own score on a golf card. Get it wrong in your favor, and you pay a penalty for the gap. If this breakdown is useful, subscribe. The next one's already coming. Here's the catch the brochure glosses over. Because interest is charged for every single day a payment is late, missing your March and June installments is dramatically more expensive than missing December's. A skipped March payment keeps accruing interest across several quarterly rate changes right through to when you finally pay. Think of it like a snowball rolling downhill. The earlier it starts, the bigger it is by the time it hits you at filing time. Before I get to what this actually means for your wallet, the most counterintuitive piece, here's the second catch. CRA says once your installment interest for the year passes $1,000, a penalty stacks on top of the interest. That penalty is 50% of the interest above the greater of $1,000 or 25% of your no installment interest amount. Think of it like a late fee that only shows up once your interest bill is big enough to notice, and then it doubles down on you. So here's what it means for you. Picture a self-employed consultant with net tax owing around $6,000 a year who keeps ignoring the reminders to leave her cash invested. At roughly 11% effective installment interest, she's paying CRA about $660 every year, while her portfolio might return 6%. Think of it like turning down a guaranteed 11% payoff to chase a hoped-for 6%. The rational move is almost always to pay the installments and stop giving CRA a double-digit return on your money. And this is the biggest number, saved for last. Modeled across a 23-year career on a $6,000 average balance, that $660 a year adds up to about $1,580 in interest. And with penalties and a few spike years where interest tops $1,000, the total climbs toward $15,830. Following the reminders on time would have cut nearly all of it to zero. Think of it as an RRSP contribution you're handing to the government instead of your future self, a $15,000 gift to CRA. 3 quick moves. First, log into CRA My Account. Pull your last 3 notices of assessment and check if net tax owing crossed $3,000 in the current and either prior year. Second, open your latest installment reminder and note the 4 due date amounts, usually March, June, September, and December the 15th. Third, either pay those amounts on time, or if income is genuinely lower, use the current year estimate, but keep a buffer. Think of it like checking the toll before you drive. 5 minutes now beats daily compounding surprises later. Ignoring the letter isn't saving you money. It's quietly paying CRA an 11 to 13% return you'd never accept anywhere else. Next, I'm breaking down exactly how CRA calculates arrears interest after the April filing deadline, and why it can be even nastier than installment interest. If you want to catch that one, subscribe so you don't miss it.